What is up, everyone? Welcome back to the Leadway Wealth Builders podcast, episode 127. If you haven't listened to this podcast before, my name is Chris Rickenbaugh, and I am documenting my journey in real estate and business, and also talking a little bit about travel, hacking, and personal finance. Go check me out on the social media at leadway.wealth on Instagram and TikTok, and then you can find this podcast on YouTube, Spotify, Apple, and Podbean, or you can head over to figuringitoutfinance.com, where you're going to be able to find all of the links to the podcast, social media, and stay up to date with whatever I am doing in my business. So today, I had been thinking, because I see some of those HGTV shows, or it got brought back up from something I was watching, and I'm like, do these people, the people watching those 30-minute to an hour shows, do they understand like the whole timeline of how long it takes to flip a house? Because, that's not something I truly understood until I was in it. And, going from beginning to end, being able to put the entire project together, it does take a little bit of time. And, every project is its own animal, unless you're doing new construction to where, you're going to have a little bit more control. But house flipping, what you're doing is, you have so many different factors. All those older houses, if you start opening up the walls, you're going to find more problems. You're going to have to redo all of the plumbing. Maybe there's cast iron and they have to cut all of it out, and it's just not like replacing normal plumbing. So all of these different things add up into the timeline, and the timeline of the project is what matters the most, because, that's where your money is. And I didn't really understand that until I was a couple flips in, to where, paying the interest or I use hard money to be able to purchase the properties, and they come back and, I have to provide a down payment. It's normally in the ballpark of like that 10 to 15%, but those interest payments that hit every single month while you're in that project, it's like, ooh, now that we have 5 projects going, that's getting a little expensive. The first flip I ever did, it completed in 2 weeks. So I didn't even have an interest payment on it, and then we were under contract on the second day. So, all of that being said, I didn't understand until I had my second project go 7.5 months, and that interest kept adding up. And that was, I think it was $4,000. And then we have another project that's $4,000 a month, and this is $2,500, and that's going through an eviction. And now we have 2 other projects going on. So it's like, man, we're looking at almost $15,000 a month, and it's like, I need to budget differently. But the timeline, if you're able to offload that property or get it under contract to sell, that's when you have to stop paying, or that's when you get to stop paying that, because that earnest money deposit is going to be able to take care of it. So I really just wanted to break down from beginning to end what that timeline looks like and what a true timeline is. And I'm going to say that right at the end on the total timeline. So where do you start in being able to flip a property? So finding the property, I'm really going to skip this part, because this isn't, this is part of it, but I'm talking about from when you get the property under contract, because finding the property, you're doing direct mail, cold call, finding it from a wholesaler, MLS, or some other type of off-market lead. And like I said, I'm not going to cover it because that's a whole podcast, and like an entire set podcast of how you find leads, and that's its own type of thing. But I just want to be able to cover this for an example. So for this example, in this renovation, we're looking at a 3-bed, 2-bath, 1,200 square foot home. It's going to need a kitchen, 2 bathrooms redone, flooring, windows, but it's not a full gut. Like, the walls look pretty good to where we can just touch them up and then repaint. So a little bit of an easy project. So being able to get this property under contract, no numbers, basically we're looking at, anywhere probably around a 2-week closing to possibly 30 days if you need to raise the money. So a 2-week closing is normally when you have a cash buyer and you're ready to go. Like, my team can close within, 48 hours if they need to. They're really, really quick, but other hard money lenders, they require a lot more information. If you're going through it for the first time, it's going to take a little bit longer, but that's why I say, between 2 weeks and 30 days. And then, if you get good at it, you're going to be able to close sooner than that. Sometimes same day if you have a lot of credibility with a company, or bring your own cash. Anyway, closing 2 weeks to about 30 days. Renovation, you're looking at about 6 to 8 weeks for this project in the example that I gave, because, based off my contractor, that's about what we're working with, especially if you need to get any type of inspection. You might have a little bit of hurdles, but let's say everything goes really smooth on this project. Say we have no hiccups, we don't have to get inspections. We could probably be looking at turning this house in about 4 to 6 weeks. But we're going to say 6 weeks just for that little bit of cushion, because the listing is what I added on to. It's those final walkthroughs, that punch list, staging, that all takes a little bit of time. And then, you can list the house anytime you want on the market, but, there is a little bit of a strategy to it, to where you put the coming soon a couple days before, and then it goes live on the market, Thursday or Friday, for people to be able to visit it over the weekends. It's getting, shown up in their emails 2 times if they're looking in that area. So we're just going to call that a week. So, and then selling the house, let's say it goes live on the market and you get under contract within 1 day. It's going to be about 30 days from getting under contract with a buyer to be able to closing and cashing you out. So adding all of that up, let's just say we brought in hard money, the renovation went really clean. So that's 2 and 6. We're looking at 2 months there total, just with closing and the renovation. Listing, that's 1 week, but we're going to add that into the renovation. And then selling is 30 days. So you're looking at a total of 3 months with everything going smooth and going right on a 3-bed, 2-bath, 1,200 square foot home that doesn't need a full gut. So 3 months is quite a bit of time. And like I said, that's the best case scenario that you're going to be able to go through. Unless you're just doing little touch-ups and you can get in there 2 to 3 weeks, but that's not what I'm talking about. So your average flip, if you're doing a pretty good size renovation, but you're not having to do a full gut, you're probably looking at 3 months if everything goes off with perfectly smooth. But say it delays, say it sits on the market for a little bit, say you have to get inspections and get held up, you're probably looking 4 to 5 months with a cushion on 6, because I know a lot of hard money, they do a 6-month loan. So, you're going to be testing the waters there right on that 6 months. So I would expect 4 to 5 months for an entire project to go through, but it could obviously go a lot quicker if it doesn't need as much. But just for this example, we're looking at 4 to 5 months. If we have any type of delays or anything going on, like today, my contractor just texted me before I hopped it on here and said, hey, I said, hey, how's it going? Do you guys need anything? And he's like, well, it's not going great today. It's like, oh, damn it. So, we had a pretty good sized Lowe's order get completely screwed up, get sent to different houses. We need to repair some brick on the house and, fill in a door and where a window was. And then they only delivered 1 brick. So that obviously got screwed up a little bit, but it's just little things like that are going to slow up your timeline. Say the demo crew didn't get in there, somebody was sick, that stuff takes time, and those are the things you don't really plan for. But being able to see the entire timeline for somebody that's new to flipping, I would say perfect, best case scenario, your crew, you close quick, your crew gets in there, knocks it out, does a great job, and it gets under contract day 1. You're probably looking right at 3 months from putting your cash in and buying it to be able to get your cash out. If not, more realistically, you're probably looking at 4 to 5 months for a decent renovation. So just wanted to break that down, and that's about all I got today. Here in a few episodes, I'm going to be breaking down our trip to Austin, Texas for the Better Life REI Summit. So that's going to be really cool. I'm thinking about taking the microphone and being able to, podcast at night about, what I learned, what we talked about, just to be able to document the entire thing. And so that's coming up. But I wanted to, document the travel hacking part of it, because, we use points and miles on this, and something that would have cost probably, a good, with flights and hotels and rental cars, you're probably looking, over $1,000 for sure, probably closer to $2,000. But with those points, we paid a heck of a lot less. And you're going to have to listen to that episode for the full breakdown. But as for episode 127 on this podcast, that's all I got for you today. So this is Chris Rickenbaugh signing off, saying we will see you on the next one.